Good morning guys, and welcome to a new episode of Raspberry for Sale. Today it's not only about coffee, it's mainly about AIS and VHF splitter. So we will take a look what you can expect of those splitters if you want to use one antenna only. Of course, there's always the first question, do you want to use one antenna or two antennas? So one separate antenna for AIS, for example, at the stern somewhere where I had it before, or on the roof, there's my antenna. I have one. If you have two masts, maybe it's easy, you can use two antennas, but if you have just one mast, the question is one antenna on the mast and the splitter, or a second antenna, usually then on the stern. When you take a look at masts, you could also think, hey, I put two antennas on top, here and there, but you see on this one, it's also on another post. And why is that? You shouldn't put two antennas too close to each other. Just think about the 25 watt on channel 16. If you send with full power, you can harm your electronics if this is coupled into the other antenna. So this is not an option, putting two antennas next to each other. And even if you put them maybe a bit more down on your mast, you will get some issues with the sails and so on. So usually the only option for two antennas is two masts, separate post, or if you put it on the stern somewhere. If you put it on the stern, you will get in conflict with your lines, but especially the range will be reduced by far because of the height. Let's take a look on my system here, and you see I use an AMEC splitter. And the reason why I do this video is it has massive differences on the market what kind of splitter you use. There are splitters which will reduce your transmission and reception power by far, way too far in my opinion. So first let's start with Matsutec. Matsutec is the company behind Onwa, or they cooperate with Onwa. I don't know exactly. It's a Chinese company. So you see the Onwa I tested last time here, but also some Matsutec branded products. I looked for a splitter and all products, marine and antenna mount, a bit weird to find it, but there you will find the Matsutec MA splitter. And this is a splitter, it's a passive splitter, and this already should make you a bit nervous because passive usually can't fight against the loss, which is necessary or is automatically given if you use the antenna, one antenna, and you split AIS and VHF, because usually you have to split it in 50-50. 50% of the signal strength you have received is going to the AIS receiver, transponder, whatever you have here, and the other one to your radio. And this is exactly what you see here. So the division ratio is 3 dB, and 3 dB means 50% loss. And this is only due to the division ratio. The total loss is given here, so that's the insertion loss. That's the total loss of this unit. Of course, this is higher, 3.4 decibel. So this is logarithmic, which means we have about, 56% of loss now. Why is this higher? Because you have additional loss, not only the division of your signal, but also wires, connectors, and so on create additional losses. So on this diagram, you can see what happened. We had 25 watts on channel 16, but because of the 3.4 decibel, worst case, maybe it's a bit less, but it's more than 3 definitely, you got 45.7 left. That's equal to 11.4 watts. So a high loss with this unit. So getting this reduced to absolute minimum is important. You don't want an insertion loss, and you don't want these kind of splitters which put it 50-50. But that's not all. Also for sending, you need to consider a few things. And one, for example, is it fail-safe? When you want to reduce your loss, then we talk about something which will not work without power. So we need 12-volt power for the splitter. And then the question is, what happens if the power is gone? So you need a fail-safe mode. Fail-safe means when you lose your power, it needs to switch permanently to VHF. During my research, I came across another company which looks quite interesting. This is Quark-Elec. They have a lot of interesting products. Some of them I really would like to test, and maybe we can get this done. I already am in contact with them. However, they also have a VHF splitter, one for active and one for one for receivers. They're both active, but one for receivers and one for transponders. We will not just look at the transponder one. And yeah, so this is an active one, so it has 12-volt supply. However, when we take a look at the specifications, you see there's an insertion loss of about 3 decibel for VHF radio. Smaller or equal, but it could be 50%. That's only slightly better than the one we saw before. And even though I think this company has quite interesting products, this one wouldn't be my choice. So one manufacturer which really earned my attention is Em-trak, not only because of the very nice page with all the nice advertisements. The products really look awesome in my opinion, but they also have a lot of interesting products. Again, today we just will look at the antenna splitters. When you go to that section, you will find one transceiver which can be ordered with integrated, then the price will go up by the way, splitter, which you also get from other manufacturers. But now let's take a look at the pure splitter. So that's the S300, and the S300 looks already quite interesting. Zero loss antenna splitter, IPX7 rated, so watertight and so on. And when we go to the technical specification, we see that it really has no loss on the receiving path, so 0 decibel. That's great. It has some loss though on the transmission part, but below 1 decibel. That is about 10%, so below 10% for sending on VHF, so for your radio. But that's okay, and that looks quite promising. It has a power consumption of 150 milliamps. That's average, let's say, or it's okay. There are some which specification is worse. But what I couldn't find, also not in their documentation, is if they have a failsafe mode. So I think they don't have one, and that is something I miss. So you saw it already that I use something from All-Tech Marine, or AMEC called. When we go to products and accessories, you will find the Cubo-162. 162, by the way, there is a 161 predecessor available, which takes more power and has a higher loss. So be sure that you buy the 162 if you want to buy an All-Tech Marine product. So let's open this one now. And what you see here, and that's also a good overview, I think, that everything is specified AIS separate from VHF, so the receive path, both 0 decibel, so no loss in the receiving path for both, and both have, like the Em-trak, a 1 decibel loss for the transmission path, so about 10%. You see also that the operating current for receiving is specified, and for transmitting, as we usually don't transmit that much, 100 milliamps is the typical power consumption for this instrument. And this one has additionally not only an error indicator, which I also like, it has, where is it, a fail-safe operation mode. Guarantees uninterrupted VHF radio operation, even if the splitter is turned off. And that's something which I find convincing, and why I have chosen this one, although they are all, in my opinion, way too expensive for just being a splitter. But the technical specs are suiting my needs. It is not watertight, and I think it has IPX2. Yeah, so that is maybe for someone a
drawback, a downside. For me, that's okay. So, and there's one manufacturer you all know. This is B&G, and this unit here, the NSPL 500, I found it under several labels, and it seems that Navico is the origin, and I guess B&G bought it. I don't know. This unit looks quite similar from the specs to the Em-trak because it has also IPX7. And even if you can't see this on their page, unfortunately, so I really love pages where you can see the specification. Here you have to go to the manual. By the way, you see also other manufacturers here, so it seems to be some kind of cooperation. Let's quickly jump to the specifications, and you see also 0 decibel loss for the receiving path and 1 decibel typical for transmitting. So quite similar to the Em-trak, but also to the AMEC, but also here, which is more to the Em-trak, it has IP67, but I can't find any failsafe mode. So it seems really to be an alternative. Maybe it's a bit cheaper, I don't know, compared to the Em-trak, even though the Em-trak looks maybe a bit more modern, but it could be an alternative. However, I couldn't find the failsafe mode here as well. Finally, we will take a look at the Glomex R8201. Even though this is not a splitter for a transceiver, this works only for pure receivers. That's important, yeah. So you may not connect this one to a transceiver. That's in general something you really need to consider. You need a splitter which works for transceivers if you use a transceiver. This is for receivers only. And why do I have this here open? I just want to share with you how important specifications are. So when you want to know the loss of this unit, you won't find it because it just says built-in preamplifier, 15 decibel shared on 2 inputs. So that's the amplification to compensate power loss. Okay, but what is the total insertion loss? This is not specified, so you can just guess. And I also would like to underline that, because I owned this unit, that there is one thing which makes me crazy or drove me crazy. There's no LED on it. You don't know if it's running or not, if maybe the fuse here is broken. But as I couldn't find any fail-safe information, I was not sure what happens if this fuse is broken. I guess it will just go down to maybe 3 dB loss, 50%. I don't know what happens. And I hope it would still work. Maybe something to test. But anyway, this is not what I would expect from a specification point of view. But for my comparison, this is anyway not suitable because this is not working with transceivers. Speaking of comparison, let's take a look on the comparison of what we have seen. I created a table for you so that you can see it in a nutshell. Power consumption, which doesn't differ so much. We see a difference in the insertion loss. That's really, really important. We see a difference in the IP rating. This may be important, depends a little bit on your requirements. And I could only find 2 products which really stated a fail-safe mode. And because for me, fail-safe and the insertion loss was most important, you saw who the winner is, in my opinion. So that's why I have chosen the AMEC. By the way, if I would start from scratch, I would buy a transceiver with an integrated splitter. And yes, I would buy one fail-safe and just use one antenna, but you can make up your own opinion, and see you next time.
See you next time.